Welcome to the Deep Dive. We peel back the layers on complex narratives, diving deep into the source material to get to the core truths, the surprising connections, and really the insights that tell the real story.
And today we are plunging headfirst into the gilded but deeply corrupt world of Thornfield Estates.
Absolutely. The sources we have detail this incredibly tangled web of events, hidden identities, betrayal. And it all stems from a place that, on the surface, promised perfection.
That perfection, as our sources show, was completely synthetic. Our mission today is to really dissect the facts of this intertwined mystery.
Right.
We need to trace the trajectory of Jane, the original outsider, through this labyrinth of lies and understand how the alleged death of a powerful business mogul led not to quiet closure, but to a chain reaction of murder, blackmail, and a truly astonishing inheritance.
And what an inheritance. We are definitely looking at the price of the perfect life, the cost of maintaining that glittering cage that Thornfield Estates truly was.
The setting is so critical here. It's the whole foundation of the psychology we're looking at. Thornfield Estates isn't just wealthy, it's defined by this architectural and social excess.
We're talking about a classic subdivision of McMansions, these colossal structures that have nothing to do with necessity.
Not at all. 7 bedrooms, formal dining rooms, separate family dens, studies, and, as the source rightly notes, a baffling 8 bathrooms.
8 bathrooms. I mean, that detail alone tells you everything, doesn't it? You don't build 8 bathrooms because you need them.
No.
You build them because you can, and because you want everyone else to know you can. The entire neighborhood is built on want over need. It's consumption disguised as aspiration, and that excess, it just generates a kind of moral carelessness.
Exactly. The source suggests that for the people living there, the main motivation is just maintaining the facade, this look of effortless, impeccable success.
And into this hyper-curated environment steps Jane.
The ultimate outsider. She walks dogs. She used to be a coffee shop worker from a place called Roasted, and she's the one observing this world from the absolute lowest rung.
And Jane sees right through the performance. She watches residents like Mrs. Reed, who will, pause her phone call to ask Jane about her day, looking like she gives a damn, but...
It's just that, a performance. Feigned sympathy.
Totally.
And then you have others, like Mrs. Clark, who we later find out is Emily, and she uses Jane's first name, treating her almost like a family acquaintance. But that's a carefully managed ritual.
Why do they do that?
Well, they do it specifically so they can reassure themselves that they aren't assholes. They think, see, we're good, benevolent employers who treat the staff well. Jane becomes a utility in their own self-perception, not a person.
And Jane's ability to see that, to recognize that performance, is what makes her so dangerous later on.
It is.
Okay, so let's quickly introduce the 4 central players here and their status when the story kicks off. First, you have Jane the dog walker, the outsider, who we find out is living under an alias.
Right. She's really Helen Burns, and she's running from some pretty severe trauma in her past.
Then there's Eddie Rochester, the handsome, wealthy widower. The neighborhood assumes he's mourning his lost wife, Bea.
And he's described as expensive, but perpetually rumpled. He doesn't quite fit that neat, perfect Thornfield mold.
And then there's the ghost haunting the community, Bea Rochester, the missing wife. She's not just a socialite. She's a legitimate business mogul, the founder of Southern Manners.
Southern Manners is fascinating because it's the physical manifestation of the whole Thornfield aesthetic. The source calls it overpriced cutesy shit.
I love that description.
It's perfect. Lots of gingham, silver salad tongs shaped like bees, and the infamous $500 sweaters stitched with that deeply affected phrase, "Hey, y'all."
It's aspirational Southern kitsch for the affluent.
Exactly. And finally, we have Blanche Ingram, Bea's best friend. She's also a shadow, having disappeared right alongside Bea in that alleged yachting or boating accident. So the community is mourning 2 prominent women at once.
Okay, let's unpack this. This community is built entirely on appearances, Bea's empire, the 8-bathroom homes, Mrs. Reed's practice sympathy.
All of it.
And our sources show just how quickly those walls crumble when Jane, the keen observer, decides she doesn't just want to watch anymore. She wants in.
So before Jane's life intersects with Eddie's, she is living this life of just sharp contrasts, and it's driving her insane.
She is desperate to escape what the sources call the ugliness of her life in a place called Center Point. Tell us about Centerpoint.
Centerpoint is the anti-Thornfield. It's just a haven of strip malls, fast food joints, cheap apartment complexes.
A concrete jungle.
Pretty much. And Jane's living situation is so tenuous. She's 2 weeks late on rent for her tiny 700-square-foot concrete box of an apartment, and she's living with this manipulative and frankly unsettling roommate named John Rivers.
John is a total nightmare. He's an office assistant at a local church, which adds this layer of superficial respectability to his passive-aggressive behavior.
Oh, completely. He constantly eats Jane's limited supply of food, he opens her door without knocking, and he just sucks up all the oxygen in the space.
And the danger here, which Jane is very aware of, is that she only took this arrangement because she needed a temporary place, but now he knows just enough about her past to be a real threat.
Her internal motivation is so crucial. She's not just seeking financial stability. She wants psychological freedom. She wants to get closer to the type of person she wanted to be. Someone who lives a life of order, beauty, control, the opposite of the chaos of Centerpoint and her past.
And that deep desire for control, it manifests in this really risky coping mechanism, petty theft from her clients.
Yes, and this isn't rational economic crime. It's psychological warfare on a micro scale.
It's small-scale rebellion.
Totally. She steals items not for their monetary value, but because they are proof of her defiance and the residents' profound carelessness.
So what kind of things are we talking about?
She takes a single diamond earring from Mrs. Reed. Taking both would raise suspicion, but taking one, she knows they won't even notice. She steals a sterling silver dog tag from a little Shih Tzu named Major.
She doesn't sell them right. She keeps them.
She keeps them. She enjoys the having and the knowledge that they won't notice. She feels like she won something. It's this act of validation. The rich are so oblivious to their own excess, they can't even keep track of their status symbols.
This impulse control issue is such a critical trait. It completely foreshadows how easily she steps over much bigger moral lines later on.
Yeah, the sources really show that Jane's small defiant acts were just preparing her for a much larger confrontation, a confrontation that arrived the moment she met Eddie Rochester.
Eddie stands out immediately. He's a sharp contrast to the other Thornfield husbands. Jane notices that the typical men in the neighborhood are, well, soft. They wear wrinkle-free khakis and polo shirts, and she describes them as having a softness to them, weak chins.
But Eddie is different. He's expensive. Rumpled, high-end jeans and boots, a pristine but unbuttoned white shirt. But he looks exhausted.
And Jane is instantly attracted not just to his wealth, but to his genuine focused interest in her, which she finds almost more attractive than the nice clothes.
But the first few red flags are there immediately. He's a widower, and Jane clocks the missing wedding ring, which is a huge social anomaly in that neighborhood where marital status basically defines a man's success.
She also sees the emotional vulnerability. He's wearing these dark aviator sunglasses, even though it's raining. And when he takes them off, his eyes are rimmed in red. He just looks completely worn out.
And his house is also described as feeling empty, lonely. It reminds Jane of the other widower in the neighborhood, Trip Ingram. There's this palpable sense of loss, or maybe more accurately, absence, just hanging over the Rochester property.
So when he invites her in for coffee made in an expensive Keurig, of course, she accepts instantly. This is the pivotal moment.
It is. Jane describes it as walking through a door, and the relationship just accelerates at this phenomenal, almost alarming pace.
But the shadow of Bea Rochester is unavoidable. Jane starts stalking the deceased wife online after meeting Eddie. She's consumed by this need for information. She has to understand who she is potentially replacing.
And Bea's online presence is everywhere, thanks to Southern manners. Bea, we learn, was known as Bertha Lydia Mason before she created this mogul persona. The narrative she curated was just impeccable.
Grew up in Alabama, ancestors were state senators, highly successful entrepreneur. She described marrying Eddie as her only impulsive decision.
The source material is very clear about this. Bea was the perfect mogul, the perfect woman, the perfect wife. She embodied the precise image of elegant, curated Southern success that Jane so desperately craved.
Jane's reaction is twofold and really complex. She instantly Bea hates the perfection, the effortless wealth, the curated story.
But she's also consumed by the need to know everything about her, to absorb the knowledge of how to create such an impermeable identity.
And the ultimate chilling takeaway for Jane, though, is simple and primal. Bea was perfect in every way. Successful, beautiful, married to Eddie. But Jane is still alive.
Wow.
That simple, brutal fact fuels Jane's ambition to step into that perfect life that was left behind. She knows she might be broken and flawed, but she won the only contest that really matters: survival.
So the progression of their relationship moves with just dizzying speed. It's propelled by Eddie's immediate, almost overwhelming generosity and Jane's deep, deep need for security.
On their first dinner date, Eddie casually orders a $100+ bottle of wine while Jane is still, scanning the menu for the cheapest glass.
That casual display of wealth is just intoxicating to Jane. It immediately signals that she is worth an expensive bottle of wine to him, a level of material validation she has never, ever experienced. This is about more than money. It's status confirmation.
And his attention is just as critical. He listens genuinely to her small, carefully constructed stories about her past. She shares a partial truth, a sanitized anecdote about her foster care past, mentioning a dad who was obsessed with cream soda, but never let her drink it.
And this is where Eddie shows his calculation. The very next day, he stocks his fridge, not with the cheap generic cream soda, but the expensive high-end version sold in dark glass bottles.
He's confirming that he heard her.
Exactly. And he is willing to spend to fulfill that tiny, long-standing childhood desire. For Jane, who spent her life trying not to be noticed, this attention makes her feel profoundly seen, cherished.
That feeling of acceptance, combined with the instability of her life in Center Point, just encourages her to move in quickly. And the financial integration follows just as fast.
So fast. Eddie offers to add her to his personal checking account, noting that the Southern Manors account involves a lot more fucking paperwork.
Okay, let's pause on that. He offers her immediate access to his personal funds, potentially thousands of dollars, with a casual wave of the hand, but he frames the business account as too complicated. Isn't that a massive red flag?
It's a huge red flag. It suggests this strong compartmentalization and maybe an urgent need for liquidity without regulatory scrutiny.
But Jane is completely blinded by the ease of it. She wonders, is it that easy for men like him? The sources suggest Eddie is either immensely trusting or he's calculatingly testing her loyalty.
And Jane internally notes that Eddie probably thinks she would never do anything to betray that trust, which is a chilling assumption, given her history of petty theft.
This rapid progression towards commitment is also fueled by external pressure from the Thornfield community. The neighbors define a woman's value entirely by her marital status.
Women like Emily, Campbell, and Anna Grace, they're constantly reminding Jane that if he's going to have you living with him, the least he can do is put a ring on it.
Marriage is the ultimate status symbol there. And Jane needs that legitimacy to feel truly integrated.
So this external validation pressure pushes Jane to accelerate the commitment. When she presses Eddie on where this is going, she throws a partial truth about her foster past onto the table, a calculated gamble.
And it pays off. Immediately, Eddie proposes with a vintage emerald ring, telling her that her painful history doesn't make him want her less, but more.
But even as Jane is winning, the mystery deepens. The ghost of Bea Rochester remains restless. The neighbors are still dissecting the yacht accident, and we learn that Eddie had moved with incredible speed to declare Bea legally dead via court order.
That decision allowed him to take over Southern Manors, an incredibly decisive, almost mercenary move. It seems focused entirely on protecting the corporate asset rather than mourning his wife.
He moved faster than anyone expected, and it secured his control over the company.
And here's where the narrative just fractures completely. It moves from romance to true crime.
Detective Laurent shows up.
A detective asking these casual but penetrating questions about the duration and nature of Eddie and Jane's relationship.
Jane is immediately thrown into this existential panic. She connects the detective's questions not to Bea's disappearance, but to her own deepest, darkest secret. Her violent past in Phoenix and the name she left behind, Helen Burns. She is terrified that the net is finally closing in on her.
But the true horror is revealed by Eddie himself. He later tells Jane that the police found Blanche's body, and she had a skull fracture.
Which means the disappearance is now a murder investigation, and Bea's case is officially being treated as a homicide.
This realization that Jane has moved in with a man whose wife and wife's best friend are victims of murder is just stunning.
It raises the most important question. If Blanche was murdered, who is the killer? And crucially, why? The sources provide the answer through a crucial hidden narrative. Dee's journal entries, written from inside the house.
Bea, in her frantic narration, describes the night of the accident. She remembers the water being warm, her head heavy, her thoughts fuzzy, and Blanche screaming. She woke up, here, locked away.
And the pieces just clicked together for her. Eddie drugged them both. He murdered Blanche.
She observes Eddie during his visits to her, her place of confinement. He looks terrible. His eyes are red-rimmed, his skin slack with stress.
But he quickly snaps back into his polished composure. He's adopting the facade of the mourning widower while bringing her books and supplies. He is stressed, yes, but he is fundamentally in control of the situation.
This hidden narrative also clarifies the complex, toxic friendship between the two women. Bea reveals severe underlying tension. Blanche was deeply jealous of Bea's wealth, her success, and even her husband, Eddie.
It seems like Blanche had been chipping away at Bea and Tripp's brittle marriage. The relationship was built on this superficial foundation of shared social standing, but underneath it was just deep, deep resentment.
The further we dive, the more astonishing the layers of identity become. Bea Rochester, the founder of Southern Manners, was never truly Bea Rochester.
Her real name was Bertha Lydia Mason, and she had spent her entire adult life crafting the Bea persona to escape a chaotic, troubled past.
It's a classic Southern Gothic tragedy. Her father was an alcoholic, her mother coped by mixing vodka and Klonopin. Bea had changed her name in college just to excise that history and build this image of Southern Manners elegance.
And here is the terrifying detail that drives the core conflict. Bea's mother died in a fall just 2 weeks after she publicly embarrassed Bea at a lavish Southern Manners reception.
How did she embarrass her?
Drunkenly, the mother revealed Bea's real name and all the family lies to this affluent crowd. It effectively blew a hole in the carefully curated narrative of inherited elegance.
And Eddie suspected that Bea may have pushed her mother, a horrifying thought that just lingers throughout the sources.
And Blanche, unfortunately for her, knew this secret, or at least she knew Bertha Mason's original identity and the instability she was hiding.
So what's fascinating here is that Blanche wasn't just planning to steal Eddie, she was planning to reveal the horrible thing about Bea likely involving the mother's death or her true identity to him.
Bea's motive for killing Blanche was fundamentally existential. Blanche was threatening Bea's carefully constructed life and her empire, Southern Manners. Bea saw Blanche not as a romantic rival, but as a threat to be done away with to protect the very foundation of her identity.
The sources establish this clear moral equivalence between the players. Bea is a self-made killer who eliminates threats to her identity.
And almost immediately, Jane's own past resurfaces, threatening her new life and showing she is cut from the exact same cloth.
John Rivers, Jane's roommate from Centerpoint, starts blackmailing her.
Yep. He demands $2,500 cash, revealing he's been contacted by someone from Phoenix looking for a woman named Helen Burns. The past she fled has finally found her.
And the Phoenix connection is the key to Jane's deepest, most violent secret. She left Arizona after an incident involving her abusive foster father, Mr. Brock, who had a chronic heart condition.
And Jane admits in the source that during one of his heart attacks, she intentionally let him die. She withheld his heart pills, flushed them down the sink, and just watched him struggle and die.
This revelation is monumental. Jane, the meek outsider, is a calculated killer who eliminated her abuser to gain her freedom. She is not morally superior to the wealthy murderers she has surrounded herself with.
Not at all. She just committed her crime out of necessity, not for wealth.
And Eddie, in this moment of chilling, calculated trust, gives Jane the Phoenix contact number. He says he's had it for a month, even before he proposed, but never called because, as he claims, he trusts her.
But Jane realized the cold truth behind his eyes. He wasn't testing her loyalty. He was offering a profound, implicit warning, a statement of shared understanding.
When he says, "That's what you do when people threaten you, Jane," he's defining their relationship. They are both ruthless survivors who manage threats. This trust is calculated, conditional, and utterly binding.
This leads directly to the ultimate setup. Tripp Ingram, the widower neighbor, is arrested for the murders.
The police found his credit card was used to buy rope and a hammer, and he was at the lake house that night. He's the perfect patsy.
Jane, in genuine shock, visits Tripp in jail. He desperately warns her, confessing he was afraid and was set up. He tells Jane, leave Eddie, Birmingham, all of it.
He reveals key context that solidifies Eddie's motive. Eddie was constantly over at his house, and Blanche had wanted to move because Bea was suffocating her. Tripp is a true victim of a sophisticated frame job orchestrated by someone desperate to divert attention.
And now we get Eddie's full, shocking perspective drawn from the sources. He confirms he killed Blanche, but he did it not out of desire, but to protect Bea from a murder charge for the crime Bea was about to commit or had already committed.
It's a complex, twisted motive. He rationalized that he couldn't let Bea just do away with anyone who crossed her because it would ruin everything.
And more pragmatically, he wanted to save Southern Manners. His thought process was brutally pragmatic. No one wants charming knickknacks from a murderer. The asset was more important than the moral compass.
The panic room, where Bea is locked away upstairs, was his desperate solution to contain the truth and the killer, his own wife, Bertha Mason. He admits his reasons for pursuing Bea were initially mercenary, validating Jane's earliest suspicions.
So Eddie was just attempting to manage the fallout of Bea's violent nature and protect the financial empire he had become invested in.
So you have two killers, Jane and Bea, and one framer manager, Eddie, all orbiting around a fortune built on deception. It is a house of cards just ready to fall.
The narrative reaches its boiling point through a small, overlooked detail. Jane begins hearing these strange noises, subtle thumps coming from the upstairs ceiling, noises Eddie had previously dismissed as, squirrels or the house settling.
And Jane, having accepted the emerald ring and the promise of stability, is trying to ignore these sounds. But her innate curiosity and the deep suspicion planted by all these identity reveals, it just pushes her. She investigates.
And she finds a hidden closet door is now open, and inside, she finds Bea Rochester, alive and confined.
This revelation just shatters Jane's understanding of her entire relationship with Eddie. Bea is pale, confined, feral, but she still retains that essential, terrible elegance of the mogul Jane had studied online.
And Jane realizes she wasn't replacing a ghost. She was merely a placeholder, a temporary fixture in a life owned by another woman.
So when Eddie returns, Jane confronts him, and the confrontation turns violently physical. The sources confirm Jane hits him in the face with a heavy object, breaking his teeth, causing white-hot, crushing pain.
The perfect facade of the Rochester home finally collapses into chaos.
And in the midst of the struggle, Bea makes her ultimate calculated power move. She realizes the panic room alarm wasn't working in case of a fire.
She understands Eddie's calculation. He was betting that she would need him, that she would be forced to come out and let him out, ensuring his survival.
But Bea refuses to yield control. Instead, she decides to set the house ablaze, running into the fire in the panic room, embracing the flames. This is her final act of control, her final commitment to her legacy.
By ensuring the house is reduced to ashes and crime scene tape, she guarantees that the full truth, that she, Bertha Mason, was the root cause of all this violence, is buried forever.
It's the ultimate sacrifice to protect the brand. She believes this is the final way to protect Southern Manor's reputation, by taking the secret and Eddie with her.
And Jane, suffering from smoke inhalation, manages to escape with minor injuries. The aftermath is surreal. Detective Laura informs Jane that trip is cleared.
The police now believe Eddie murdered Blanche and Bea, then committed suicide by setting the fire.
And the evidence supporting this official conclusion is gruesome and specific. They found Eddie's broken teeth among the ruins. That solidifies their theory that his body was destroyed in the blaze. They have a neat conclusion, a narrative the community can accept.
The grieving widower driven mad by his crimes.
And now comes the profound, unexpected reversal of fortune, entirely dependent on Eddie's final act of calculation. Jane learns that Eddie, before the confrontation, updated his will.
He left Bea's entire fortune, hundreds of millions of dollars, including the majority of Southern Manor's shares, to Jane Bell.
The lawyer tried to talk him out of the change, but Eddie had secured full control of Bea's finances after declaring her legally dead. This act transforms Jane overnight. The perpetual outsider and small-time thief now commands a massive fortune built on lies, murder, and ingamum.
And Jane's first act with this new wealth is so critical to understanding her transformation. She uses the money to immediately silence John Rivers.
But she doesn't just hand him cash, does she?
No. She pays him off by making a massive, untraceable donation to his local church.
That is the most Thornfield thing she could have possibly done. She eliminates the blackmailer, cements a respectable public image, and uses the community's moral structures, faith, and philanthropy to buy her own legitimacy.
She realizes that this massive fortune is the perfect wall against the past, a way to ensure that Helen Burns is buried forever, and Jane Bell, the wealthy philanthropist, can finally be free to leave Alabama.
So to recap the absurdity of this conclusion, Jane, who's really Helen Burns, who began by stealing sterling silver dog tags and running from a crime of passion, she successfully infiltrated a world of ruthless wealth, navigated a double homicide investigation, and through a series of accidents and calculated moves by others, emerged as the sole heir of an empire.
She replaces Bea Rochester Bertha Mason as the mogul's successor, having acquired hundreds of millions. And the only person who knows the complete truth is Jane. That Bea was the original killer orchestrator, with Eddie attempting this dangerous, elaborate, and ultimately fatal cover-up to protect their shared financial legacy.
And Jane, the source tells us, is now living in a cozy cabin in the North Carolina mountains. Away from the humidity, the mansions, the chaos, she has achieved the stability and order she craved.
But the story leaves this lingering doubt, a necessary ambiguity. Jane questions the official narrative, recalling the chilling detail that Eddie's body was never fully recovered.
Only the broken teeth she knocked out. The possibility remains that Eddie, a master of improvisation and cover-up, could have survived.
She sometimes wonders if Eddie and Bea both survived that inferno. They both master the art of creating and destroying identities for power. Perhaps they recognize their shared ruthless nature, their profound commitment to self-preservation, and escape together.
Maybe back to Hawaii, where their story first began.
She imagines they're better off now without all that. All the pretense, the money, the empire, the neighborhood pressure, the murder investigation. They're free from the weight of maintaining the perfect life.
But if two people like Bea and Eddie, who specialized in the construction and demolition of human identity for power, faked their own deaths and successfully escaped, does that make them the ultimate winners of the ruthless game they created? And if so, what price did Jane pay for her freedom, inheriting a fortune soaked in blood, lies, and fire? That's the ultimate ethical question you are left to mull over long after this deep dive is done.